Hi, it's Daniel Murphy, and today I'd like to talk to you about using a bucket truck safely. Bucket truck's a phenomenal tool. I'm 55 years old as of Sunday, and I can still go out there and put a lot of wood on the ground with that bucket truck and still stay in the tree business. It would be very difficult for me to stay as a climber and be able to sustain the day-to-day work that needs to get done to make a living in this business. So the bucket truck to me is a crucial tool. The point of this coming video is that rather than just using one flat outrigger pad for each outrigger, I like to keep a lot of cribbing, a lot of lumber on the truck, plywood, 2x, 6x6s, and I really like these laminated beams that are used in construction. Generally, you can find when a house is being built, they're using laminated beams. They may cut a piece off and dispose of it, throw it in the dumpster. And I've readily grabbed them, cut them to size, and love to use them for outrigger cribbing. They're sizable, they're not that heavy, not too hard to handle, and they are extremely strong. They're like indestructible. I've heard a number of stories of failure of bucket trucks over the years due to the outrigger being set up on a bad footing. Generally, that can be on soft ground or on the side of the hill where the hill gives way underneath the weight of that outrigger pad. If you're working exclusively on one side of the truck and you're going on for a fairly extended reach, or you're going to be fully extended, that's the side to really focus on getting the good cribbing underneath your outriggers. Obviously, you don't take for granted anything. There may be a situation where you're flipping sides, turning around, going from one side to another. So you always make sure the cribbing on both sides is set properly. Setting your bucket truck up on a proper grade is also important to make sure your bucket truck's level. My truck has levels that'll tell you when you're within range or not. And again, the more reach you're going to have to the side, the more important that leveling is. Also, if you can work off the back side of the bucket truck, generally there's a much less of a possibility of tipping the truck if you're going off the backside. If you've ever worked with a crane, you'll know that when you're setting an outrigger pad up on a grade or on the side of a hill, it's very important to level out the cribbing before putting the weight on that outrigger pad. Otherwise, when the weight comes on, that outrigger will want to slide right down the grade there. We'll take a look at some of the outrigger setups. In particular, I have a couple of pins I bring to jobs with me occasionally. I don't always have them on the truck, but if I know I'm going to be working on a steep hill, I'll bring the pins and I will actually pin the outrigger pads to make sure they can't slide down the hill. That looks a little better. I love these things. They're indestructible. They're lamb beams from construction jobs where people are putting up laminated beams. They cut the ends off, throw them in a dumpster, come by, grab them, throw them in the truck, and they're just practically indestructible for using as outrigger pads. Always good to have a lot of lumber around, set up whatever your situation may be. All right, that's a big piece of laminated beam on the left. It's bridging that little curb there, and maybe that's a piece of plywood or something on the right, but basically creating a level area there. And here's a really important one. You see those two pins there, the two metal pins in the foreground? They're holding that entire cribbing up so that that whole system doesn't slide down the hill. It's tough to tell how steep that hill is, but you got to make sure that top piece where that outrigger hits is level and nothing's going to move below it. This is a bird's eye view of the front outrigger. There's a 6x6 right underneath the outrigger, and then you can see that's a soft area. That's like a muddy area or a mulch bed or some soft area, maybe a hill area. It's been raining a lot. Don't want to take any chances when I start leaning that side that 6x6 is going to sink. And I've buried them right in the ground before where you can't dig them out. So what I did was use some plywood or maybe a laminated beam on both sides of it, front and back, to make sure the footprint was wide enough that there's no way it's going to sink, no matter how soft the ground is and no matter how far I'm leaning out there. Sometimes I'll use big pieces of plywood, whatever it takes. And here I'm using a shovel, digging out from being stuck here. That's another thing you can do with the outriggers. If you have a lot of cribbing and you get stuck, you can lift those back tires up and get a mat underneath them. Also notice how much wider, because those back outriggers are on a 45-degree angle, how much wider, when they're fully extended like that or close to fully extended, they're a lot wider. They got a lot wider of base it gives you, and you can go a lot further to that side without worrying that you're going to start lifting up the back side of your truck. That's one of the techniques I use when I know I'm going to have a far side reach. I want those back outriggers out almost all the way. And I'll also bring that side of the truck up. You know, you're looking at your leveling line there and your leveling meter, and then you just bring that side of the truck that you're going to be leaning towards up a little bit. Not much. Keep it still in the green, but give yourself a little favor in that direction. Here, the front of the truck is still on the driveway. We threw some mats down to protect the lawn. While we were there, we just left the mats there, added another one in the back for the rear outrigger. But the thing that's important here is that this is not the side of the truck that the tree is on. All our work is going to be done on the other side of the truck, so I wasn't particularly too concerned about these outriggers being taking a lot of weight and having to be very, very stable. That's plenty stable, believe me. That's not going anywhere. But the other side of the truck is where the lean's going to be. So let's take a walk around there and see what that looks like. Notice the plywood underneath the mat on this front outrigger. That plywood is there to protect the driveway. With all that weight coming on this side of that front outrigger, that diamond plate pattern in the mat could actually leave an imprint in the driveway. So we threw a little piece of plywood underneath it just to make sure that was safe. And look at all that cribbing underneath the rear outrigger. There's at least 3 pieces of lamb beam underneath there. It's all leveled out. It's not going anywhere. There's a nice wide footprint. That's where most of the weight is going to be coming here. I'm not even worried about it. When I get up in that truck, the last thing I want to have to think about is, are my outriggers stable? I want to focus on the job at hand.